Happy 250th Independence Day for those that are watching. This is the 4th of July 2026. And I am responding to... There's one form that I follow that is for both Doordash customers and drivers at the same time. And so this one comes from a customer, and I'm going to respond here. They're like, well, why are you complaining about no tip orders? Why are you complaining? I've seen this post more than once, by the way. Why are drivers complaining so much about no tip orders? Well, I explained in text, of course, what most of you drivers already know, and that's that DoorDash base pay for trips is only $2 in most markets, which is not even enough to cover the time that you wait at these restaurants. Again, I live in Forest Lake, Minnesota. Average wait time 12 minutes. So I want to add another layer to this right after I get done here. But what I want to say is that this doesn't even pay enough for the time that we wait in these restaurant lines for the actual food, and therefore, that doesn't even account for any mileage that's involved, which, I've seen trips in this market. They're very rare, but I've seen them where they will come up for $2, and the mileage will be like 12 miles outside of town. That's the kind of market this is. And we are, obviously if you're going 12 miles for $2, it's a no bueno for most of us. But customers are complaining that we're so obsessed with tips. Well, this is the reason why we're obsessed with tips, is because we depend on them largely for our income. DoorDash will, to their small credit, explain that tips will entice drivers to accept orders. What they don't explain is the fact that the base pay for a trip is only $2 in the lion's share of cases and markets. And so I wanted to take a moment just to explain this, that they have completely turned around on traditional tipping culture. Tips, of course, used to mean for after service was completed for a job well done. But in DoorDash, that is not the case, or Uber Eats for that matter. That is not the case. We depend on tips for basically any sort of viable payment. We don't make money without tips on these delivery apps. Period. And customers need to know this. But Bree explained in one of her videos lately that for a customer to even find out what their actual fee goes towards requires a series of hoops. They got to click on quite a few links, quite a few of those little circle question marks that are next to the fee explanations on their order screen, and to see where the money actually goes to. And obviously, she clicked all the links there, and it went through to show that ultimately almost all of the fee money that they pay these apps goes to the apps themselves. It doesn't go to the drivers. Again, as I said before, if most drivers will get $2 of that, and that's it. So before you sit there and complain that we're complaining too much about tips, this is why. Now, something I'm going to throw in there just for funsies here. I'm going to explain here real quickly just how ex-urban and just how semi-rural this market is. We are honoring a veteran today in our 4th of July parade here in Forest Lake. And he was a veteran of World War II. And he advocated for many things for the Forest Lake community. One of them being Interstate 35 being built from the Twin Cities through here. The Forest Lake split is the result of this man's efforts, which is where 35W and 35E meet outside of town here and become Interstate 35. Another thing that this veteran advocated for is that until 1975, a phone call from Forest Lake to the rest of the Twin Cities metropolitan area was a long-distance call. It is not the local call that it became later on after 1975. That is how rural and how remote this market actually is. is that it was considered long distance to call the rest of the Twin Cities metropolitan area before 1975. Of course, after 1975, it became the local call that it eventually would later be known as. Of course, these days we don't have any differentiation really between local and long distance phone calls since the advent of cell phones. They basically took long distance definitions and removed them entirely to where you're making all of your calls now without any long distance toll charges. But in 1975, this was not the case. It took the effort of one World War II veteran to get us to Forest Lake being in the Twin Cities local dialing area. But that's how far out we are. We are when I say that we're a rural and ex-urban market, I'm not joking. That's real. That's for real. And that is a fact that highlights this fact that we were once considered a long distance call for most of the Minneapolis-St. Paul metropolitan area. It was a long distance call to Forest Lake, or vice versa. So I wanted to throw that out there just for the heck of it today. But anyhow, this is my explanation to those customers that are complaining on our forums about drivers' insistence on tips. That is why. What if I told you that we depend heavily on tips to make any real money, and that if not for tips, this would be a money-losing venture entirely, without question, no questions asked. Drivers would lose money doing this. So we have good reason to insist on this. And you say, take it up with DoorDash, take it up with DoorDash. DoorDash doesn't care, okay? Let's get that out of the way right now. Tony Zhu does not care about this at all. He does not care about the drivers. Of course, I being the founder and CEO of DoorDash. Same goes for Dara Khosrowshahi at Uber. They do not care. They do not answer to drivers. They don't even answer to customers. They don't even answer to restaurants. They answer to their shareholders, which is corporate America today in a nutshell. They answer to their stockholders. It's making profits for them that matters more than satisfying or taking care of drivers, restaurants, or customers. Which, by the way, that's going to be a future episode, and that's how DoorDash rips off all three. I don't think anybody's going to be able to argue at that point once that episode comes out, but that's where we are today. DoorDash does not care about paying its drivers. They care about making money for its shareholders. As a publicly traded company, same goes for Uber. Both publicly traded companies. The shareholders are the boss of them, just like they are the boss of us. Whether they admit it or not, or they try to classify us as independent contractors, it is true. Your boss, if you're a DoorDasher or an Uber Eats driver, your boss is you do have a boss. It's actually just not a human one. It's an algorithm that is created by the companies. That's your boss. Anyhow, done with my rant for today. I will call it good for now. Happy 4th of July, everyone, to those who celebrate. And as always, peace out, homies.